Beyond my wildest imagination that I would one day become the notorious RBG.
I did very well. It was not possible to do much better.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born on March 15th, 1933 in Brooklyn, New York. She was originally born Joan Ruth Bader. Her father immigrated from Russia at the age of 13 and her mother immigrated from Austria. Ruth's father achieved some success as a fur manufacturer during the Great Depression, while her mother worked in the home and helped with the family business. Even though her mom portrayed the standard idea of women back then, she encouraged Ruth to pursue education. She often took her to the library and kept her supplied with books. However, when Ruth was only in high school, her mother suddenly died from cancer. Ruth went on to earn her bachelor's degree at Cornell University, where she met her husband, Martin Ginsburg, on a blind date. Soon after, they had a daughter named Jane, and 14 months after that, Ruth went to Harvard Law School. The law school was mainly occupied by men. For example, Ruth was only one of 9 women that were present in a class over 500. On top of that, she experienced issues with older faculty, having to justify her coming to the law school. Eventually, she transferred to Columbia University to continue law school. She graduated from Columbia and tied for first place in her class.
Whatever you choose to do, leave tracks, and that means don't do just for yourself, because in the end it's not going to be fully satisfying. You will want to leave the world a little better for your having lived.
In 1970, Ginsburg co-founded the Women's Rights Law Reporter, the first journal in the United States devoted to gender equality issues. Mainly, the journal focused solely on women's rights, exploring related law and policy issues. In 1972, she developed the Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union, which basically allowed women's voices to be heard in law, after she got notified of several different sex discrimination complaints. The ACLU's Women's Project was a systematic effort that kind of urged courts to treat sex discrimination in the same constitutional terms as they would race discrimination, and to also attack various forms of sex discrimination that was at the time permitted by law. In 1974, she wrote the first book, Text, Cases, and Materials on Sex-Based Discrimination, which was on sex discrimination in law. As she rose in popularity, Ginsburg had started to speak at several different institutions and law schools like Harvard and Columbia. She thus then started to deal with cases that were heavily focused on sex discrimination. An important case was the Weinberg versus Weisenfeld. This case basically focused on Stefan Weisenfeld, a man who had been denied child support, and the argument was that if he were a woman, he would have received it, like most women who were widowers did. Ginsburg had won this case for him, and then 3 years later, she entered another case based on sexual discrimination. This was the case of Dern versus Missouri. Basically, Missouri had made jury duty mandatory for men, but it was optional for women. Once again, she had won the case, and this just helped her earn a national reputation for advocating equal rights of men and women.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So in 1993, she had been appointed a position on the U.S. Supreme Court by Bill Clinton. She became the second woman in the court, the first Jewish woman to serve, and through that, she was actively advocating for gender equality and women's rights. She ruled on many cases that had focused on the equality of women and mainly became what she had focused on in the Supreme Court. She had helped ban several laws that had prevented abortion, healthcare to women, or laws that helped women get equal pay. So overall, she really has done a lot more to not only protect the right of women, but also just everyone. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is identified as a feminist icon. Sadly, she had passed away in 2020 after battling colon cancer, but she was looked up to by many. You can read about her life and you can visualize her work based off of books that were made, like the Notorious RBG and some feature films that her nephew made, which is on the basis of sex. She was truly admired by a lot of people and will not be forgotten.